Are you having trouble as well, Priya?
I'm just trying it now. So I'll see, I'll let you know. You couldn't get onto the Wi-Fi.
No.
I am accepting the conditions. I don't know what that means here, but. Yeah, it looks like.
Good afternoon, board. I think we should get started. This meeting is being recorded through Zoom and extend a welcome to all the online viewers. We would like to acknowledge the many Indigenous nations that have long-standing relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories upon which we are located. Today, an area is home to many Indigenous people across Turtle Island. We acknowledge that our watershed forms part of the treaty and traditional territory of the Southern Eastern Anishinaabe. It is on these ancestral grounds and treaty lands that we live and work. To honor the legacy, we commit to being stewards of a natural environment and undertaking to have relationships of respect with our treaty partners. Number one is the adoption of the agenda. I note that the correspondence has been added, so the resolution is that the agenda of meeting 3/26 be adopted as amended. Mark? Harold? Any declarations of pecuniary interest? None noted. Approval of the minutes. The resolution is that the Board of Directors minutes of the meeting of the 2nd 26 be adopted as circulated. Yeah, Jerry and Tracy.
These are members to look for too.
I appreciate the board's patience with me. This is the first meeting I've chaired in probably 20 years, so I'm a little bit nervous. I know how important the board is. Deputations, none. Presentations and applicable action items, a lake management plan implementation, City of Kawartha Lakes, Carolyn Schneider, a community engagement technician.
All right, through you, Mr. Chair, before we begin, I just did want to take a moment to reintroduce Carolyn Snyder to the board. She has presented for you before. I've had the privilege of working alongside Carolyn for the past 4 years and in the most recent year as a coordinator. And as someone who has been both at the staff level and the leadership level of this project, I can say how pleased and actually proud I am of the work that Carolyn has done over the years, but especially this year, and with the contributions from other team members as well, to make the Lake Management Implementation Action Plan a big success. Carolyn consistently leverages her people skills to coordinate the very diverse, broad array of programs wrapped into this plan. So when she's not directly on the ground supporting the activities of these projects, she's actually behind the scenes, wrangling our project leads, wrangling the leadership team for updates, photos, newsletter articles, reporting requirements, everything else you could think of that helps us have content to circulate to our partners and our community implementation advisory group called the KEAG, that some of us have taken on this acronym. Also, as you know, our programs are extremely scientific. They can be very specific. So Carolyn is digesting information around fish spawn data, but also engineered drawings for green infrastructure projects. And she's digesting it and bringing it all together for us to be able to understand today easily, which I commend her for. It's not easy. So again, thanks for ensuring our project is on track, that we're meeting our municipal commitments. And I know we have a great number of good news stories to share with you today. So without further ado, pass it off to Carolyn.
Thanks, Danielle. So the Lake Management Implementation Action Plan outlines the multi-year programs that will be delivered to satisfy the priority recommendations from our lake management plans, while also supporting the strategic goals of the city of Kawartha Lakes. Does this work? Sometimes. Melanie,
Thank you. We appreciate it.
does this work?
Try now.
Okay, so this is our agenda. I'm going to go over each of the program areas and give updates for each of the programs that fit into those. Got it. So just kind of like big overall numbers. Over the last year, the team achieved remarkable success. This includes 22,692 native trees and shrubs planted, 886 feet of shoreline restored, $249,223 in funds leveraged, and 2,418 native species planted. So our first program we'll jump into is the Kawartha Water Fund, which provides private landowners and community groups with financial support through microgrants to implement environmental projects that are going to directly impact the health of our lakes. So through this program, a total of 15 private landowner projects were successfully completed across the region. This included 6 agricultural projects that supported farm-based initiatives aimed at improving land management and environmental sustainability, 4 rural projects focused on enhancing ecosystem health, 2 urban projects that encouraged green infrastructure and environmental stewardship in more developed areas, and 3 waterfront projects that promoted best management practices for shoreline and stream bank stabilization. So altogether, $36,000 in funding was awarded and fully invested into these initiatives across City of Kawartha Lakes, and it leveraged an additional $82,108 in contributions from our community. In addition to that, 5 community group projects were also completed. These projects included the establishment of a community native plant garden to support pollinators, stream bank stabilization efforts to enhance green space and improve wildlife habitat, the development of educational materials alongside a community-focused education event, another stream bank stabilization project that strengthened shoreline resiliency and prevented erosion, and an education program designed to engage school-age children in conservation efforts. So through those community-led initiatives, a total of $32,044 was granted and leveraged an impressive $167,144 in community investment. So our partner and community engagement program, the team experienced considerable success across several key areas of engagement. The Watershed Watch monthly digital newsletter evolved into a full article format that more effectively highlights our ongoing projects and programs. This transition has supported steady growth, with just over 200 subscribers now receiving that newsletter directly to them each month. The team also continued to work closely with the Community Implementation Advisory Group, the CAG, as Danielle mentioned, which meets regularly with Kawartha Conservation staff to provide guidance and support in advancing the Lake Management Implementation Action Plan. So through this collaboration, meaningful connections have been strengthened with community members, local businesses, and academic partners, helping to ensure the programs remain responsive and impactful. Building on that momentum, relationships with external agencies were further strengthened, including partnerships with Trent University, the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Agribusiness, Parks Canada, Forest Canada, Environment and Climate Change Canada, TD Bank, RBC, and so many more. Staff also maintained a strong presence in the community by attending a wide range of events to promote programs and engage with stakeholders. This includes the East Central Farm Show, Kawartha Lakes Country Living Show, the Kawartha Lakes Steward Association spring and fall meetings, the Carden Forum, the Fenland Falls Horticultural Society annual plant sale, Sturgeon Point Association garden tour, and the Balsam Lake Association AGM, among many others. In collaboration with Kawartha Conservation's communications team, a new public-facing digital dashboard was piloted. This tool will provide accessible summaries of program outcomes such as trees planted, water fund dollars, all those results that will feature an interactive chart to allow users to explore year-over-year comparisons. A key highlight for the team this year was our participation in the Botanical Jungle documentary series, which showcased local conservation initiatives, including our spring native plant sale and the lake health monitoring efforts. The sediment and erosion control program. So for this year, or last year, the team achieved several key advancements in both technology and field operations that strengthened our ability to support responsible development and environmental protection. A major highlight was the integration of drone technology, with surveys conducted at 2 large-scale development sites, each approximately 100 acres in size. That was within Lindsay Heights area and the gateway of Lindsay. So using autonomous flight missions, staff were able to efficiently cover each site in approximately 21 minutes. Through photogrammetry, these surveys produced high-resolution 3D terrain models with an impressive accuracy of 1 centimeter both vertically and horizontally. This allowed for precise measurements of slope, topsoil distribution, and areas vulnerable to erosion. As a result, the team was able to identify high-risk erosion zones, provide informed mitigation recommendations to developers, and support compliance with environmental regulations. In addition to these technological advancements, staff capacity was further strengthened through professional development. 2 of our team members became certified in erosion and sediment control inspection, increasing overall inspection capacity and enhancing our ability to ensure regulatory compliance. So over the course of the year, staff completed 20 construction site inspections, using these opportunities not only to monitor compliance, but also gather valuable insights. Our agricultural stewardship program. So we made strong progress in advancing agricultural outreach and on-the-ground environmental initiatives across the watershed. Staff attended and presented at a variety of agricultural and community-focused events, including the annual agricultural commodity group meetings, the City of Kawartha Lakes VIP Farm Tour, the East Central Farm Show, the Zero Net Farms event, and the Couchiching Conservancy Garden Forum. These opportunities allowed the team to connect directly with the agricultural community, share knowledge, and promote stewardship programs and best management practices. Staff continue to actively participate in the East Central Farm Stewardship Collaborative, strengthening relationships across the sector. As many of you know, obviously, in 2025, Kawartha Conservation also became the new legal entity for the Alice Kawartha Peterborough Northumberland program, making a significant milestone in regional program delivery for us. In addition, staff maintain their role on the Alice Participant Advisory Committee, further reinforcing partnerships and supporting collaborative decision-making. A major highlight was the continued implementation of the Talbot River Healthy Environment Initiative. In 2025, the program advanced 3 core best management practices, including the installation of a solar-powered watering system to provide reliable off-stream water for livestock, the implementation of livestock exclusion fencing to protect stream banks and reduce sediment and nutrient inputs, and a shoreline riparian planting using native species selected for deep root systems, flood tolerance, and ability to provide long-term shade to regulate water temperatures. The initiative continues to engage 7 participating landowners supporting ongoing water quality monitoring. This data will be essential in evaluating the effectiveness of these practices and informing future stewardship efforts across that region. The Forestry and Tree Planting Stewardship Program. So in 2025, we reached several important milestones in tree planting and habitat restoration across the watershed. Through successful funding efforts, a total of $35,953 was secured from Forest Canada to support large-scale planting projects. As part of Forest Canada's tree planting program, 9 planting sites were completed within the City of Kawartha Lakes, resulting in the planting of 14,425 trees and the restoration of approximately 8 hectares of land. These efforts included the establishment of 3.78 kilometers of windbreaks, as well as 6.25 hectares of block plantings. Community engagement also played a key role in these efforts. So through our over-the-counter seedling sales, 6,150 seedlings were distributed to residents across the City of Kawartha Lakes. In addition, staff partnered with TD Friends of the Environment to host a TD Tree Day at our very own Windy Ridge Conservation Area. Supported by $7,438 in funding, the event brought together more than 30 volunteers to plant 250 trees and shrubs. These plantings will help to address localized flooding concerns while also enhancing habitat connectivity. Our shoreline program. So the Waterfront Stewardship Program promotes naturalized and stabilized stream banks and shorelines through on-the-ground demonstration sites, technical services for landowners, and the semi-annual native plant sale. So in 2025, we launched a new and enhanced watershed welcome outreach campaign aimed at increasing awareness and engagement across the region. With the support from a local real estate agency, 6,000 welcome packages were distributed to waterfront property owners throughout the watershed. These packages served as an introduction to Kawartha conservation, highlighting the program, services, and resources available to support responsible land and water stewardship. In addition, we hosted our semi-annual native plant sale, continued to make native species more accessible to our community. This past year, staff introduced a new series of curated plant kits that aligned with our urban forest guide, with a focus on encouraging increased tree and shrub plantings in urban areas of the city of Kawartha Lakes. New offerings included our shoreline tiny forest, small and large backyard forest, and the sensational forest kits. The sale was highly successful, with more than 2,400 native plants sold to 72 community members, further supporting local biodiversity and urban canopy growth. So the Community Science Monitoring Program engages community volunteers in proactive nearshore water sampling as an early warning system to identify pollution sources entering our local lakes. In 2025, the program saw meaningful growth thanks to an additional combined $8,600 in funding from the Kawartha Lake Stewards Association, Balsam Lake Association, and the Scugog Lake Stewards. This generous support allowed staff to significantly expand the program's reach and impact. Over the course of the season, 28 citizen scientists were trained to conduct monthly monitoring from May through September. Sampling took place across Balsam Lake, Cameron Lake, Sturgeon Lake, Pigeon Lake, and new last year's Lake Scugog. Monitoring results highlighted both strengths and areas for continued focus. Balsam Lake demonstrated excellent nearshore water quality overall, with minimal chloride, nitrate, and E. coli, although total phosphorus exceeded guidelines late in the summer. Cameron Lake showed a similar trend with slightly elevated phosphorus levels in August and September, but otherwise strong water quality indicators. Sturgeon Lake results were consistent with previous years, with some exceedance in total phosphorus and increased temperatures, but overall conditions remain strong with opportunities for targeted improvements. Pigeon Lake continued to show positive results with low contaminant levels and reduced conductivity, indicating lower salt inputs and overall strong water quality. In contrast, Lake Scugog exhibited higher levels of total phosphorus, chloride, and E. coli, along with the highest conductivity of the monitored lakes. Given the surrounding pressures from development, agricultural, and urban areas, these findings highlight the need for focused management. So to further share these insights, the team also published the Community Science 2025 Nearshore Monitoring Report on our website. This report provides a comprehensive overview of the program, detailed data analysis, and key findings, helping to inform future stewardship efforts. The Bobcaygeon Dam Aquatic Habitat Assessment aims to evaluate the impact of the Bobcaygeon Dam on the aquatic ecosystem and identify opportunities for habitat improvement. In 2025, important progress was made in advancing aquatic habitat assessment and monitoring efforts. A total of $35,000 in funding was secured through contributions from Parks Canada and the City of Kawartha Lakes, supporting ongoing research and data collection to better understand local aquatic ecosystem. As part of the work, fish population monitoring activities were carried out, including walleye watch and additional measurements of water temperature, dissolved oxygen, and water levels. These efforts are helping to establish a stronger baseline understanding of species presence, spawning success, and overall habitat conditions within the system. A key initiative last year was the implementation of a stop log removal trial following the navigation season. This adaptive management approach was designed to improve oxygenation and restore more natural flow dynamics, ultimately creating more favorable conditions for fish survival and supporting healthier aquatic habitats. Staff are currently analyzing the data collected through these efforts to assess impact on habitat quality and overall ecosystem health. Findings will play an important role in informing future water management decisions and guiding collaborative efforts to expand and refine that stop log removal trial under higher flow conditions. Our stormwater monitoring program assesses urban runoff areas in Lindsay and drainage zones leading into the Scugog River to identify nutrient contaminant sources. In 2025, monitoring efforts were carried out across a comprehensive network of sites, including 5 water level sites, 10 water quality sites, and 32 fish community sites spawning Jennings Creek, Distillery Creek, Sinister Creek, Albert Street Creek, Sucker Creek, and the Scugog River. Data collection was enhanced through the use of water quality loggers and automatic samplers, allowing staff to capture conditions during wet weather events and better understand how these systems respond to precipitation. Key observations throughout the year highlighted the dynamic nature of these water courses. Spring conditions brought an elevated flood risk, followed by drought conditions in late summer and early fall. Notably, Albert Street Creek dried up for much of July and August, yet demonstrated how quickly urban creeks can respond to rainfall, rising from no flow to 0.8 meters within 24 hours, following approximately 35 millimeters of rain. New winter monitoring also revealed significantly elevated chloride levels compared to summer months. For example, Albert Street Creek recorded an average winter chloride concentration of 1,510 milligrams per liter compared to 449 milligrams per liter in the summer, with peak levels reaching 1,970 milligrams per liter, more than double the short-term guideline of 640 milligrams per liter, where ecological impacts can occur within 24 hours. Overall water quality results indicated poor scores across all monitored creeks, including Jennings, Distillery, Albert, and Sucker Creek, while conditions in Scugog were rated as fair. These lower scores were largely driven by elevated total phosphorus, aluminum, likely associated with soil inputs, and chloride levels. Fish and aquatic plant monitoring provides additional insights into ecosystem health. So a total of 15 fish species were identified, including key recreational species such as largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, bluegill, pumpkin seed, common carp, and yellow perch, as well as an important bait fish species like bluegill, pumpkin seed, blunt-nosed minnow, golden shiner, white sucker, and banded killifish. Across all sites, 135 fish were captured, with bluegill and yellow perch being the most abundant. The fish community was largely composed of intermediately tolerant species, representing approximately 72% of the population, while sensitive species remained relatively low. Overall, the nearshore fish community within the Scugog River reflects a system dominated by intermediate to tolerant cool water and warm water species with limited presence of sensitive taxa. Similarly, the aquatic plant community was primarily composed of intermediate tolerant submerged species. Comparisons between 2024 and 2025 indicate that these ecological conditions have remained relatively stable, with no significant changes observed in key indicators over the past year. And our final program is our urban restoration program, which promotes urban naturalization techniques to improve infiltration and reduce urban runoff through demonstration low-impact development projects, collaborations with the building industry, and private land consultations. In 2025, the program secured $50,000 in funding through RBC to implement low-impact development projects at Sinister Creek Park in Lindsay through to 2027. Working in conjunction with the stormwater monitoring program that has been conducted on Sinister Creek, these projects are designed to improve water quality and manage stormwater runoff. Staff will work to collaborate closely with the City of Kawartha Lakes to plan and implement these features this year, ensuring the projects can complement ongoing monitoring efforts and deliver measurable environmental benefits. To further enhance their expertise, staff have been enrolled in the Sustainable Infrastructure, Low Impact Development and Climate Resilience Micro Certificate, which is a program through McMaster University, which will provide advanced knowledge on delivering innovative and impactful projects that reflect our commitment to environmental health and climate change resilience. Staff continued active participation in the City of Kawartha Lakes Environmental Advisory Committee, providing expertise and guidance on local environmental initiatives and supporting collaborative decision-making on sustainability and watershed management. And that's enough from me.
Thank you for your presentation, Caroline. Certainly have a lot of information in it. Are there any questions from the board? Yeah, Tracy?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Great presentation. I always look forward to it. You should really show us the impact of how much you get done in 1 year. Just wondering, with the climate challenges in 2025, have it impacted any of your programming? No.
Not that I'm aware of, no. I don't, Nancy, do you?
Great.
Any other questions? Be resolved that the presentation from the 2025 Lake Management Implementation Action Plan accomplishments be received. Tracy and Mark, all in favor? Down to the Lake Management Planning Implementation Report, and Danielle Marco Hunter, Coordinator and Stewardship.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm sharing with you the Lake Management Implementation Action Plan 2025 Accomplishments Report. Each year, as you know, we provide a progress report on the works that were completed under this 5-year plan. As you've heard already today, there were quite a few very diverse and impressive accomplishments from the project leads across our organization. In the report, you'll find quantifiable success accompanied by some really nice imagery. And we are seeking board approval to proceed with this report and be able to share our successes with our community and partners.
Thank you. The motion is resolved that the Lake Management Implementation Action Plan Accomplishment of 2025 and report be endorsed, and that the report be circulated to the member municipalities. Jerry? Oh, Kriya, sorry.
Thanks for leading.
All in favor? Carried. 6.2, the Durham Watershed Planning Summary of 2025 activities. Brent Tegano, aquatic biologist.
Hello.
I hope I didn't butcher your last name.
No, I actually did pretty good. No. I can introduce anything, Nancy, or just go into it? No, no.
This is Brett, who's been here before. Brett's been instrumental in this project over the years, so he's done some really great work. And I'll introduce Brett.
Okay, I'm sorry, Brett.
No, it's okay. So you'll see the board report in there about Durham watershed planning, and this is the aquatic plant sampling in Lake Scugog is one component of that. And I brought props too. Okay, so we're very happy for the support of Durham Region for financial assistance. Perfect. So quick background about Lake Scugog. It's relatively productive and shallow, and it's got a really heavy water quality management focus. Like Carolyn had mentioned, in terms of all of our lakes in our jurisdiction, and actually most of the Kawartha lakes in general, with the exception of maybe Rice Lake, it is the most, polluted, quote unquote. So with the most potential, for improvement. And there's been a heavy water quality management focus over the last 20 or so years. And for the conservation, we've been primary, sampler and manager of the lake. And but it's a provincially significant inland fishery, one of only a few across the province. And as you can see from that pie chart, most of the issues around the lake are related to excessive nutrients, but also salt and everything else. But a lot of that is kind of considered manageable, which is really important. And the lake is relatively murky, and generally, clean lakes are relatively clear. And so it has a lot to gain, a lot of room for improvement, and we can use aquatic plants to help track that improvement. And aquatic plants, weeds, some people call them, they have lots of benefits, but we're going to use them in the context of this as an indicator of lake health. Generally, as you see, water quality improve or get worse, aquatic plants change. There's certain different species of aquatic plants that are more prone, they thrive in good water quality versus some that thrive in poor water quality. And there's a bunch of different indicators we can track over time. One really cool thing is this is new for us, aquatic plant sampling, aquatic plant management and monitoring. And you'd probably be surprised, I know I am, that like no one's doing this. Aquatic plants are usually one of the top 5 key issues, right, for lake management. One being water quality, water levels, fishery, aquatic plants, shoreline management. And so nobody's monitoring aquatic plants. It's a key issue. Everybody cares about it. What are you going to do with aquatic plants? but nobody's there. So it's a really good opportunity for us, Kawartha Conservation, to take the lead in this. And this is our first foray into really aquatic plant management and monitoring. So our study objectives, we want to better understand aquatic plants in Lake Scugog. Everyone likes a good map. We want to map lake-wide aquatic plant conditions, and with an emphasis on lake health monitoring, tracking aquatic plants. What does that tell us about the state of the lake? So in terms of our sampling methods, it's pretty low tech. That's why I brought this. We have a double-sided rake. It's called a rake toss. And we throw it off the side of the boat and just pull it in. And it's pretty cool because anybody can do it. There's potential for volunteer opportunities. Shoreline landowners can do it. And then we have a fish finder, and that tells us where we are in the lake. So on the screen there, we basically put a grid across, like a graph paper across the lake. All those points are a sample point. And we did a blitz, and Nancy gave me 1 week of work in her budget, and she said, make it relevant. So that's what we came up with. And so we do a rake toss about every 400 square meters. It took us about a week to complete, and we completed 413 sample sites. So we would throw this into the water off the side of the boat, and we would identify all the different plants we found. We would take a voucher, if it was too hard to identify out on the water, we'd go back to our lab, our picnic table, and identify them. And we also categorize them according to rake fullness. So if you can picture, you pull this rake in and it's full of plants. Well, the amount of the rake coverage gives us an idea of relative abundance. So if it's greater than 75%, you throw it and it's hard, it almost pulls the boat towards you. We call that abundant. And so that's kind of like, if a boat was to drive there, you have to stop and, reverse and check your prop. And it's kind of a nuisance. So it's abundant plant growth. And then on the flip side, sparse is kind of less than 25%. There's a few fragments, but less than a quarter of the rake in terms of fullness. And then you've got everything in between, which we consider moderate. A little bit more subjective, but we find that if there is a lot of plants there, you're going to always get abundant. If there's very few, you're always going to get sparse. And then, so it's relatively repeatable, which is nice. And here's an example of we're just scratching the surface here. We've got so much data. But here's an example of the aquatic plant distribution in Lake Scugog. Of course, it changes throughout the year, but because we did it in late August, it kind of approximates the maximum plant colonization, if you will. And the dark dots are dense. The no dots are absent. And so we found was 83% of the lake is occupied in aquatic plants, with about a sixth or so of the lake having dense, kind of abundant aquatic plants. So that would be challenging for people to boat in. The areas, the deeper parts of the lake, not surprisingly around View Lake, Caesarea, but also around 7 Mile Island on the west, actually don't have many aquatic plants. And whereas around the outlet of the Nonquan River, up by Kings Bay in the northwest, is extremely dense with aquatic plants. And of course, we've done this by different species and a lot of stuff. So I'm going to now pivot a little bit into lake health indicators. So we've got a map and it's nice, but what does that mean for kind of lake health? And so one of the things we look at for lake health is invasive species, right? So these are species that are from around here. They have tendencies to take over and cause a nuisance, ecologically or environmentally. So 70% of the entire lake is occupied by invasive species. Most of it is starry stonewort, which is a relatively new invader. Eurasian water milfoil has been in the lake for years, since the 60s. It kind of comes and goes. It's still prevalent in the lake. But a main take home here is if you sample the site and it has plants, there's a 9 out of 10 chance you're going to get invasives. So that's unfortunately not a great indicator of lake health. Or it is, just doesn't indicate good lake health. So starry stonewort, that's kind of what it looks like on the left-hand side. And it can be confused with our native, it's actually an algae. It's called a macroalgae. It can be confused with chara, musk grass. It almost looks like spaghetti noodles with a monofilament fishing line and these white starry kind of bulbils at the end in the sediment. And then Eurasian milfoil is more stringy. It's got a really purple reddish stem on it and kind of feathery leaves. Another thing we look at is called pollution tolerance. So there's, we've got about 15 to 20 species, slightly more in the lake. And science suggests, like through studies, only certain species grow in clean water, certain species grow in poor water, depending on their life history. So we can categorize each plant according to either sensitive to pollution. So if they're really tolerant to degradation, like if the lake is really, say, for example, polluted, you'll find a lot of really tolerant plants. These plants that can hang on during, low dissolved oxygen, high salt, really murky water. And so those are the plants there in kind of in red. So those are the indicators of poor lake conditions. And then green is good. These are the really sensitive ones. They're typically only around in, really clean, clear lakes. And then you've got yellow in the middle. So you can see here just a quick snapshot that the lake is dominated by plants that are, indicative of high or medium degradation. We also look at depth of plant colonization. So the murkiness of the water kind of impacts aquatic plants. And we look at how deep can plants grow. And I know some people don't like plants, but generally, the deeper the plant can grow, the better the quality of the water. Because sunlight can penetrate through clear water, and it's just plants can thrive. And so we found that 2.9 meters depth, anything deeper than that, we did not find a single plant. So what that means is, the maximum depth of Lake Scugog is about 7.5-ish meters. So there's a lot of room for plants to grow, I should say, as we continue to clean up the lake. We might expect, for example, those plant maps to change. And of course, just being out there, we find lots of cool stuff. I don't find anything interesting stuff at my desk. It's all out in the water sampling. One of the key things there was muskie. So last year we found a lot of dead muskie, and which is a cause of concern. And we found about 5 or 6 just huge, 30+ inch dead muskie. This one there on the bottom right is a tiger muskie. So it's a hybrid between northern pike and muskie. And northern pike aren't native around here, so they're hybridizing, and it's not a great thing. But I just picked that one right out of the water. Just went right down and just picked it right up. It was that kind of lethargic and on its way out. So we notified the MNR saying, kind of what's going on? Is that fish handling practices? Anglers, for example, taking a picture. It was really hot last year, so that causes stress. But anyway, it's just a really cool observation that we wouldn't have made otherwise. Aquatic plant harvesters out there controlling plants in Port Perry. We're like, well, that might have impacted our results a little bit, around the bay. So that was good to know. Great egrets, lots of cool wildlife. Zebra mussels is another one. So nobody's out there monitoring zebra mussels, but we can use, because they attach to plants, we can use our plant monitoring as an indicator of zebra mussel populations. So we did record every time we saw a zebra mussel on a sample. So approximately 63% of the lake is colonized by zebra mussels, as indicated by aquatic plants. So I'm just scratching the surface. I'll stop it there, but really appreciate the support through Durham Region. This allowed us to kind of dial in these sampling processes and guidelines, and now we're rolling out a similar approach through our City of Kawartha Lakes Lake Health Monitoring Program. So we're really, really excited to take the lead in the Kawartha Lakes on aquatic plant sampling. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your informative presentation. Are there any questions from the board? Jerry?
Through the chair, I'm more curious, it was mentioned earlier in Caroline's, and you're on top of that. This idea of changing the flow across Bob Cage and damming, have you noticed anything at your level of expertise that is helping, changing, doing anything different?
So through Mr. Chair, so we're just, it's kind of early stages. We're planning on sampling a few different years to capture that annual variability. One year is different for the next. So we found that, for example, one of the key concerns is this vortex. And if you've been out on Bob Cajun Dam, you look down and because the flow is coming from the one side, there's this swirl. And there's a concern that the fish are spawning there, laying their eggs, they're hatching, juvenile fish get caught there. So when we did the pilot project in October, so after Thanksgiving navigation season, after Thanksgiving, we did notice an improvement right away in the stop log. As soon as we took a stop log off the top of the dam, it definitely, the net flow was positive down the river instead of kind of the swirl. So that was interesting, Our monitoring results also show that time of year is important as well. So this year, the main spawning shoal was underwater, which is great for fish spawning. And there certainly was a vortex there. But when the fish hatched in May, the vortex was almost non-existent. So depending on the stage and the discharge, which we can track, we can match with water levels, this vortex can be there or not, depending on how high the flow gets, which is super important. I say one challenge that was recognized in a report by AECOM in 2011 is actually the winter drawdown. And so the fact that, Parks Canada draws down the water in the winter or in starting in the fall to accommodate spring freshet. It's a big system, they have to wait till after navigation season is over before they start drawing down. That significant drawdown can impact, for example, hibernating like wildlife, like turtles, muskrats, beavers, things that build dens, and it might kind of, dig in for the winter and then all of a sudden find themselves exposed when water levels really crank down. So there seems to be a quite apparent gap there, generally on an annual basis, whereas the spring lately conditions are generally favorable for aquatic life.
Harold, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you through you, Mr. Chair, to Brent. Back to the Lakes Geolog there. So the areas that seem to have the higher concentration of weeds, the ones I picked out basically and in your graphs there, the Port Perry Bay, the outlet of the Moncline River around Seagrave, and then some areas to the north of People Lake through there. Are you attributing mostly to runoff there or to the fact that these are shallower areas of the lake?
Mm-hmm. So great question through you, Mr. Chair. Shallow, the two main things in my experience lead to high aquatic plant growth, shallowness. So generally, the more shallow you are, you can expect higher plant growth. Also, the amount of energy, like for example, a low energy environment, say for example, a protected bay, or those areas exist on the west side of the lake that aren't exposed to the winds that constantly pound from west to east. So they tend to be more prone to aquatic plant growth, but also the invasive species, so generally you add those things together, and then add clear water with soft mud, you're going to get aquatic, high growth. And so those areas you mentioned tend to be on, the west side of the lake. They're protected, they're shallow, and they have a high relative abundance of invasive species.
And if I may go further to that, you mentioned the pounding water motion there, which brings up kind of, are the aquatic thrusters effective? Are they working?
Again, through you, Mr. Chair. So we've done some preliminary research on aquatic thrusters, and they are rampant around the lake, which indicates people find them cost effective, right? Because they're out there. Although maybe neighbor envy or, they've got that, yeah, exactly, the Jones syndrome. But our studies, we did it 2 years ago, they indicate that they can have significant impacts on aquatic plants, depending on which way they're angled. So if they're angled, for example, down into the sediment, the turbulent force of water, it's almost like a raging river, right? So not only just the actual, force of it, aquatic plant stems can't grow, but also the sediment, it can take the sediment and just blow it out. And so that there's not a suitable growing medium. Problem is, it doesn't disappear, it just pushes it, right? And so often what you have is a crater of deeper water, and then your neighbor, guess what, has now a shelf and with more plants. And so they buy one. And then, we also found that it, depending on, again, the angle, it did not have any significant impacts on water quality. So in the States, they recommend, for example, that you, if you're going to install them, that you angle them up so that does not impact aquatic plants, fish habitat, sediment, but it does, for example, push maybe debris of cut vegetation that might have blown in. But again, you're dealing with issues, and in the winter, there's safety issues, right? With open water now, snowmobiler may not expect it. So it's a pretty complex issue. But in terms of reducing aquatic plants in the local vicinity, yes, it does. They do work. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I really appreciated this presentation, just not even looking at notes, but just being so passionate about the whole project and so on. And when you talk about the lake having a long way to go, do you anticipate over the next 10 years, like seeing it much more degraded, or are we going to see an improvement in the health of the lake?
Thanks. Great question again through you, Mr. Chair. I wish we knew. I mean, we're trying to improve conditions. One of the challenges with Lake Scugog is what we call internal loading. And so that is, for example, all the years of, for example, loading phosphorus, right, into the lake. It settles out, it's in the sediments. Well, it gets stirred up all the time. It gets stirred up, as you know, if you boat through Lake Scugog, depending on where you are, which is most of the lake, if you look back, and we find this especially with a drone image, right, you see your trail of mud, right, in behind you. So you're stirring all that up. And then when it's windy, right, another benefit of aquatic plants, by the way, is they help stabilize that sediment. And so this internal loading, reactivates, our water quality specialist, Tanner, calls it like a phosphorus bomb. It's just kind of waiting to go off. And then all of a sudden it gets murky again. And so there is a lag time, even if we were to turn the tap off right now, there is a lag time. But once that happens, science suggests it happens relatively quick, from a degraded state to more like a murky state to more of a clear water state as plants begin to do their thing and everything else. And so, but we would expect to see changes in water clarity, increases, and more sensitive aquatic plants as signs of improvement. So how long that will take, I'm not sure. We've been at this for 20 years or so, right, Mark? And we've seen modest changes. We've certainly come a long way since the 1950s and 60s. When we were putting raw pollution in the lake, and we upgraded our water pollution control plants in Port Perry. Yeah, I wish I knew, but we're going to keep at it.
I appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Jeff, says good. Yep.
And sorry.
Go ahead.
Thank you. To you, just in one quick follow-up to that, was there a noticeable improvement in the lake after the improvements to the sewage control plant in the Northern plant?
So through you, Mr. Chair, recent improvements or historic improvements?
That's plant, the improvements done what now? like 12 years
Okay.
since.
So I am not familiar with improvements in the last 12 years. We just partnered with Ontario Tech and some other groups to publish a paper on the long-term changes in Lake Scugog and the tributaries. And there was no change or slightly more degraded conditions in the lake over that period of time. And so I don't know if they looked at that stanza exactly, but certainly historic improvements, yes. So it is worth doing for sure, especially the nature of some of the phosphorus that comes out of that. It's kind of readily available for uptake because it's processed. So I'm sure it's made a difference, you know, a positive difference for sure, especially probably in the wetland, the Nonquan Education Center and the provincial wildlife area there. I would imagine it certainly has made a difference.
Yeah, I know it's, since the 80s, when it was really significant. I sail on the lake and there's some areas they're quite good now. It used to be
Good.
really bad.
Yeah, it's good.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Jeff, did you have a question?
I did, yes. Miigwech. Anin, everyone, and I apologize for not being there. I have my wife's on vacation, and so I got to get my little ones from school a little early, so I will be dropping off around 3 o'clock or so. Just a little bit of a comment here. I really appreciate the update, Brett, and all the hard work the team does there. We have we've come across funding here at MSIFN that we received as well. So really looking forward to engaging with KC to see if there's space to support each other. We have we're about to purchase 2 electronic buoys that'll go in Scugog to help have collect data and that sort of thing. So looking forward to once we have a little more details on that, engaging and going from there to help support the research and the data analysis that goes into our lake here. So miigwech for all your hard work again, and I'm looking forward to the coming weeks and months here.
Thanks, Jeff. Good seeing you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. Oh, Jerry?
Through the chair, just so I understand it better, phosphorus, a higher concentration actually increases some plant life, aquatic plant life. Is that the way nature would control the levels, or are there other ways that phosphorus levels are depleted out of water, other just flow out of a basin or whatever?
Yeah, great question. It's through Mr. Chair. Probably a better question for Tanner, our water quality specialist. He's in this game more deeply than I am in the phosphorus game anyways. So yes, it is true that phosphorus increases aquatic plant growth and algae to a point. If you really start to load it heavy, it actually can be the opposite for aquatic plants. It can turn into a murky algae dominated blue-green system. Really murky conditions that don't allow sunlight to go in and for plants to grow. So the only plants that are out there are actually the really tolerant ones that can survive those conditions. And there's places like Hamilton Harbor that are spending, or sorry, Cootes Paradise near Hamilton, that are spending millions of dollars to increase aquatic plants from that, from reducing phosphorus. So there's, so it's kind of more complicated than just adding aquatic plants, right, for sure. But yeah, in terms of phosphorus removal, I mean, life uses phosphorus, right? So things like aquatic plants is a really big uptick of phosphorus. And when you look at an aquatic plant, you'll see, like they've got a lot of surface area, right? A lot of these spaces on their stems, they're really tiny stems. And so when you look closely, it's called like an epiphyte. It's a tiny little algae that actually grows on these plants. And that uses phosphorus too. And so anything like, all the primary producers in the base of the food web uses phosphorus. It's a key element for growth, for sure. And so what you'll do, you'll see a lot of these lakes like Lake Winnipeg and Rice Lake and Lake Scugog, they're extremely productive, they call it, because of the base of the food web. You know, the zooplankton and the little creatures and the fish feed on them and that type of thing. So just life in general can take out phosphorus, which is a good thing. Otherwise, it's kind of just left in there. And oftentimes too, it can leave through high flows, right? So depending on the nature of the flows, that's where you get a lot of export. If flows aren't high, you have a lot of evaporation, it doesn't go anywhere. Just kind of sticks around and loads and then resurfaces. Yeah.
Any other questions? Motion is resolved that the presentation of the Durham Watershed Planning Update be received. Jerry and Lloyd. Harold, sorry, Harold. All in favor? Approved. I think we're almost at time for source water.
Yes,
Do you
we're
think
close. I might be able to get the next step in, which is receiving the implementation report for Durham, the Durham Watershed Planning. So I think we'll just have just enough time.
Okay. So it's Nancy Aspen, Director of Integrated Watershed Management. And Brent again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as a follow-up to Brett's presentation, so he just went through like one activity that we accomplished in 2025 with our watershed planning. So like Brett mentioned, it's a collaborative effort between Durham Region. In 2025, the other three areas that we focused on included land cover mapping updates using 2024 aerial imagery, verification of unevaluated wetlands, and as also conducting a shoreline inventory and conditions assessment on Lake Scugog. Some of the findings we found were the land cover mapping confirmed that intensive agriculture remains dominant land use, with a modest increase since 2021, raising concerns about cumulative impacts on water quality and natural features. Wetland verification, we improved our mapping accuracy, identifying 27 wetlands that no longer exist, primarily due to agricultural conversion, while also highlighting many remaining wetlands that are still unclassified and further analysis needs to be done. Brett just mentioned the aquatic plant survey and its results. And then the last activity, the shoreline inventory, showcased the shoreline to be evenly divided between natural and disturbed conditions, with residential development as a primary source of disturbance. Nearly half the shoreline was classified as high impact, providing their baseline for future management and planning. Overall, these activities have strengthened the environmental data available to Durham Region, highlighting increasing pressures on watershed and lake health. The findings emphasize the need for proactive planning to address agriculture intensification, shoreline disturbance, invasive species, and wetland loss. Ongoing monitoring and data refinement will be essential for supporting sound land use decisions and long-term watershed resilience. So we will continue this project this year and hopefully moving forward into the future.
Any questions from the board? None. The resolution that the Durham Watershed Planning 2025 activities and summary report be received. Mark? Jerry? Oh, yeah, sorry. Just yelling out.
Okay.
Sorry. All in favor? I guess now we'll go into source water protection. Maybe we could have about a 3-minute bio break.
And did you want to just recess the board meeting?
Yeah, we'll recess the board meeting. Motion to recess the board meeting. Jerry? Harold? All in favor? Okay, recess. I guess we're all ready. Note the meeting is being recorded through Zoom and extends welcome to all online viewers. Now land acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge the many Indigenous nations that have long-standing relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories upon which we are located. Today, this area is home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We acknowledge that our watershed forms part of the treaty and the traditional territory of the Southeast Anishinaabe. It is on these ancestral territory lands that we live and work to honor this legacy. We can commit to being stewards and of the natural environment and undertake to have a relationship of respect with our treaty partners. Adoption of the agenda. Resolved that the agenda be for the meeting 2/26 be adopted. Jerry, Tracy, all in favor? Any declaration of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Approval of the minutes. Resolved that the minutes of the meeting 1/2026 be adopted as circulated. Jerry? Priya? All in favor? Business arising from the minutes? Seeing none. Presentations, none. Update on the Trent Conservation Coalition's Coalition Source Protection Committee activities. Sarah Bernstein. Welcome, Sarah.
Hi. Hello, everyone, and through you, Mr. Chair, I'm going to provide an update on the Trent Conservation Coalition Source Protection Committee meeting. So since our last Source Protection Authority meeting that was held last month, March 26th, the SPC met right before on March 19th. And then this report summarizes the key topics discussed at that meeting. So we did a ratification of email polls. So earlier in fall 2025, early 2026, there were 3 emails that went out to progress system updates through the Section 34 amendment process. So this was October 31st, December 5th, and January 28th. And to initiate pre-consultation, initiate public consultation, and submit the Section 34 amendment package respectively. This is for the Woods of Manila system. So they were just general polls that went out to the SPC. The annual report was then discussed. So recognition first for the work taken in the township of Minden Hills was discussed by the SPC. And then we moved forward to a high-level summary and overview of the Trent Annual Progress Report, which rolls up the annual report for the Kawartha, Haliburton, Otonabee, Peterborough, Crow Valley, and Lower Trent Source Protection Area. An overall score of P progressing well or on target was recommended for the Trent region, and that was approved by the committee. The committee discussed matters related to septic system and sewage works within rural areas. Some members expressing concerns. A lot of these areas that were discussed actually weren't in source protection areas, but through the discussion, some suggestions were made that home inspectors could potentially start implementing septic inspections. This was just a kind of casual conversation. And we tried to keep it in source protection areas as well. Moving to education and outreach, working groups have been established at this point, and we have held our initial meetings. This is for municipal education responsibilities that are new to the Section 36 amendments that have just been implemented. So municipalities have much more responsibilities. And so how we are going to define and carry out those obligations alongside our municipal partners is going to be discussed and planned. Leads report. So each committee meeting, the leads of each source protection area give an overview or an update on their program implementation for their area, and there were no notable updates for this period. Section 36 update. So March 9th, the amendments were implemented and became effective. All implementers of the source protection policies have now been notified. Moving to section 34 updates. So the amendment package for the Woods of Manila has been submitted, and that was on March 11th. Then we discussed the environmental activity and sector registry. This is called EASER through the ministry. They had launched a new stormwater management, which enables proponents of small systems to self-register and receive immediate approval rather than applying for the more complicated environmental compliance approval. These amendments exempt certain low-risk systems and remove duplicative requirements. So under the newly introduced regulation 137.25 related to stormwater management, reports prepared by licensed engineer practitioners determine whether an activity constitutes a significant threat. So they're required to assess potential significant threats of stormwater ponds in vulnerable areas, provide documentation outlining how those designs, operations, and maintenance will not pose a threat to drinking water. EASER regulation prescribes these listed activities to be subject to self-regulation. So that's the operation, establishment, alteration, extension, or replacement of new or existing stormwater managements that are not assumed or owned by municipalities, which require a CLI ECA. Processing, repair, or maintenance of goods and materials at a property which are conducted indoors, and no discharge, processed water, cooling water, wash water, or sanitary sewage can be received. The committee then discussed briefly on planning next transfer payments, best practices for other systems. So this is an overview of public outreach efforts and the plan for 2026, and committee members with expiring terms. At the roundtable discussion, Alto high-speed train, a hot topic for our region, was brought up. Program coordinator Keith Taylor noted that the Lower Trent Conservation does not support the proposed Southern Alto train path because it's through a source protection area, and will also provide information regarding environmental sensitive areas, agricultural lands, and utility considerations in their letter. The committee discussed the anticipated significant amendments to the Conservation Authorities Act and changes to the required Clean Water Act. So there is kind of some uncertainty, including how interim government structures will support source water protection and the composition of new SPA boards. And finally, the committee member Terry Reese presented an update on the now completed Federation of Ontario Cottagers Association pilot project. He did a presentation last year on this project. It's now completed. So each lake developed their respective source protection plan using typical best management practices that we use. It was noted that this process was generally complex. It was challenging primarily due to the limited public available data, and interpreting that data was just a bit challenging. And then that concludes agenda item number 6, if there are any questions.
Any questions from the board? Pam?
Just curious, if we could just expand, and it was informally mentioned about home inspectors doing septic inspections. A little bit more background on that.
Yeah, it was just kind of discussed on how they can maintain septic inspections in rural areas, and if we can include home inspectors. It was noted that it's not really their expertise. They're more on structures, like building the structures of the homes themselves. There was no, I guess, suggestions or outcomes from that conversation. It was just kind of brainstorming how they could figure out, possibly figure it out.
Can I add to that?
Sure.
Discussion. I was a member of the Canadian Standards Authority where we created a standard of practice for Canada for home inspectors. So if we were gonna go ahead with something like that, that would be a very good place to begin that discussion. Because then it becomes a standard of practice, not just in Ontario, but across Canada. And there are certain kinds of things that an inspector must do and must be reported, and how we do that. It's a little bit sometimes outside the building code, although some of those inspectors have the same qualifications. I happen to be one of them, but I didn't do the building code. I just did enough that I need to be insured. We're good to go, right? But that's where I think we should start. I think that's a very good idea, because we have to start looking more at some of these individual situations, as opposed to just the where we're taking water from municipalities and treating it with municipalities. So I'm glad to hear that too.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that background.
Sure, that'd be great.
Jerry?
Through the chair, so on that note, most of those courses are like weekend courses. Now, unless the individual actually has some real practical background, it's a bit of a farce, I found. But I am interested, because now they're gonna push these tertiary septic systems for increase the density in hamlet areas and whatever. And where that's gonna fall, because there's no regulations on them once they're installed. They're a mechanical apparatus that needs regular maintenance, but there's no guidelines whatsoever on whether they're kept up or not. It's just, we have smaller lots for more homes. Like I don't think it's really productive as far as the water quality goes.
Good conversation.
Yeah.
Don't take too much time, but yeah, you're absolutely right. You really gotta make sure you get qualified inspectors, not the weekender that is good at an exam. I've known someone who did septic inspections for 30 years. They couldn't pass an exam if his life depended on it. So there is a real knowledge that's important out there. So having said that, and some of the ideas about what else we're gonna cover as a source water protection. I remember when I first came on this board, we got involved with the situation, well, in Minden, where zoning wasn't approved, but the ministry approved a place for septic to be distributed. And there was a lot of confusion, so it got a lot of the departments on board on the same page and getting the processes done. But I think there's a lot more work that can be done, particularly for rural areas and people concerned about their water quality that are private as well. So I'm glad to see that we're thinking more about that in that direction. Good points raised too.
Any other questions? The resolution is resolved that the update on the Source Water Protection Committee activities be received. Harold, Mark, all in favor? Trent Lake's Source Protection Plan Annual Progress Report. Sarah again.
Perfect. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Annual progress reports from across the region have been received by the Source Protection Committee and collated into one regional annual report. This annual progress report needs to be submitted to the MECP by the lead Source Protection Authority, Lower Trent Conservation Authority, by May 1st. As you are all aware, the Clean Water Act identifies reporting requirements to each Source Protection Authority. Each region submits one report per plan. So we submit one with the other three in our region, and then Ganaraska submits their own report. The annual report has been compiled and attached to the agenda for your review. We went through this report in quite some detail last meeting, but I will briefly run through what is being asked for endorsement today by the board and welcome any comments for revision or addition to the final submission by the board. The possible grades for the report are P, progressing well. S for satisfactory, or L for limited progress made. The sections that are reviewed are municipal progress, septic inspections, risk management plans, provincial progress, and awareness and changes in behavior. So first we have municipal progress. Municipalities are the approval authorities under the Planning Act and are the implementing body for 56 of the Trent Source Protection Plan policies. We are suggesting P, progressing well. Septic inspection program is necessary by the Ontario Building Code. This program requires septic system in vulnerable areas that would be considered a significant threat to be subject to a mandatory inspection program. This is completed by the municipal building inspectors through City of Kawartha Lakes, and staff met with CKL folks to complete reporting. So P progressing well is on target. P progressing well on target is suggested. Risk management plans. So RMOs are the implementing bodies for 39 policies in the Trent Source Protection Plan, using prohibition under Section 57 of the Clean Water Act, risk management plans under Section 58, or restricted land use and review under Section 59. One threat in our region still remains to be managed, but is not out of compliance, and ongoing work is continuing with the landowner to manage this. Progressing well or on target is suggested. Provincial progress. So due to poor reporting standards in previous years, we are still recommending a grade of S satisfactory. Due to the recent Section 36 amendments, we are expecting this grade will change next year because policies are now in place to get the information required to move it to P progressing well. At this time, S satisfactory is suggested. Awareness and change in behavior. So 10 policies utilize education and outreach to influence behavior and encourage adoption of water protection. Ongoing public outreach through community events, education seminars, and mailouts and signage when in vulnerable areas are some of the ways the program continues to provide information to the public, and P progressing well or on target is suggested. If there are any questions, edits, or suggestions, I'd be happy to take them. Staff are recommending endorsement of the Trent Annual Progress Report for submission to the MECP by Lower Trent by May 1st, with an overall status of P progressing well or on target for a region. And that concludes agenda item number 7.
Any questions on the board? Seeing none. The resolution resolves that the Trent Source Protection Plan Annual Progress Report be endorsed, and that the Trent Source Protection Annual Progress Report be submitted to the Lower Trent Source Protection Authority lead for delivery of the Ministry of Environment, Conservation, and Parks as required by Section 46 of the Clean Water Act and Section 52 Ontario Regulations 28707. A mover? Jerry? Pam? All in favor? Approved. Correspondence, none. Resolve that there is correspondence. Mark, maybe you could talk about that.
Yep, great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. There is one piece of correspondence that we received from Rhonda Bateman. It was the outcome of a board meeting that they had in which the province outlined that the province was not going to reappoint the long-term chair, the inaugural chair actually, of the Source Protection Committee. So the board was concerned about the gap in the chair position, and given that they thought he was doing a pretty good job, they were requesting from the province an explanation for their decision to not reappoint. So I thought that might be of this board's interest, and that correspondence is provided.
And the recommended resolution is resolved that correspondence be received. Jerry? Kriya? All in favor? Carried. Is there any new business? Next meeting is to be determined by the chair. And motion to adjourn. Jerry? Pam? All in favor? Thank you very much.
Thanks so much as well for Councillor McKenzie, Director McKenzie, and Director Saini for attending as well. Thanks for making me come down and
thank you.
How are you?
They're taking the dry.
We'll be reconvening our original meeting. And we'll be starting off on staff reports. Christy McCabe, permits issued by designated staff for March. She's the Director of Planning and Development Services.
She just left the room.
Hey, Nance, do you want to? Sure. I don't want to steal her glory on the successes of the plan and regulations team. Don't need one.
No problem.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm really pleased to announce that our planning and permitting folks have been hard at work. 26 applications for permits have come through in the month of March, and 100% on target as far as our timelines for both provincial as well as the shortened timeframe for Conservation Ontario. And this marks month number 9 of reaching 100%.
Any questions from the board? Motion is resolved that the permitting performance report for March 2026 be received, and that the following section 28 permits issued by staff be received. Permits issued 2026-038, 2026-063, permits received 2024-350, 2025-024. Jerry? Priya? All in favor? Thank you very much, Chrissy. It's impressive how much work staff has been doing and getting 100 almost all the time. I thank you very much.
I will pass that on to the team.
Yeah. Item 7.2, spring outlet and flood forecasting update. Nancy Aspen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So over the past month, increased precipitation and warmer temperatures have accelerated snow melt, and especially in the northern areas, resulting in elevated runoff and rising water levels, as you are probably aware. This has prompted enhanced flood forecasting activities, including the issuance of several flood-related statements and warnings. Our lake levels, particularly in Balsam Lake and Cameron Lake, are rising rapidly and have been. Balsam Lake at 5 centimeters per day and Cameron Lake at 15 centimeters per day, both nearing maximum capacities. Lake Scugog has reached its full capacity, is being actively managed. While Sturgeon and Pigeon Lakes are also experiencing increases. The Gull and Burt rivers, which provided most of the spring inflows to the Fourth Lakes, exceeded their critical limits, raising concerns for imminent flooding in those areas over the past week or so. Staff have been conducting frequent monitoring of streams, lakes, and precipitation gauges, as well as site visits to confirm flood risks and documenting high water marks. Parks Canada and Trans Severn Water are actively engaged in water management operations to help reduce the shoreline flood risks. Enhanced collaboration with our federal and provincial agencies have ensured timely updates and effective response. Looking ahead, the water levels and flows are expected to continue rising and fluctuating through April and into May, depending on ongoing precipitation, air temperatures, and remaining snowpack. The situation is being closely monitored, and updates will be provided to the public and members of the municipality as conditions evolve. Right now, we're mostly just concerned with the lakes across the Trans Severn and the Kawartha watershed. Our normal streams and water courses are not of a concern at this point. They're high, but they're not in any flood concern.
Priya?
Thank you very much. Through you. Thanks for the report. For sure it's across board. Do you get calls directly from residents? Do you field a lot of those calls?
Yes, so Nathan, our flood duty officer, does receive calls daily.
Like, okay. And does it help to explain to them, you know, how the lake levels work through Canada, or what's it called? Yeah, exactly, Parks Canada. Does it?
Yeah, so I think the most misconception is that we manage the water that goes through the system, and obviously that's not our role. So a lot of our messaging back to them is just educating them of who is managing the system and answering any questions they have on that. But yeah, typically just kind of take the calls, because if it's a high water mark or flooding concern, we want to know that so we can get data generated and so we can report it back. So we use that data to help influence our decision. So getting the information from them is important to us.
That's great. That's good to hear. I know with Lake Simcoe, and the explanation recently that it was basically just being used as a reservoir to hold the water, and it was the Severn and the Black rivers that were far more critical at the point. But it really helped residents around the lake understand that there's nothing anyone could do at the time, and that it was rising each day and everyone had their eyes on it. But that education got around, it found more like people were experiencing it together more than, you know, just like really worried about their own situation, because they weren't necessarily flooding yet, but they could see the situation and they didn't know why it wasn't, you know, being let out. Thanks for telling that. It's fine.
No other questions?
We have Director Richardson.
Oh, Richard.
Thank you.
I didn't see it.
No worries. We do municipal partnerships, like we provide the sandbags for our residents, right? Strategically, we place them in our higher needs areas. Do you feel like if you're hearing from residents calling you directly to, those are tools that are helping you as well, mitigate some of the calls that come in?
Yes, Nathan does relay that message. It's more, they're calling us for sand-aids and they're calling us for help of filling the sandbags, and that's not our role. So our communication messaging has been to calling the city of Fort Lakes, for example, where they can pick up the sandbags.
Right.
Our role in helping the municipalities, if you guys run out of sandbags, we are here to support, because we obviously have a stash put aside to help that. But we try to help them as much as we can with what we can provide. But yeah, we provide them the numbers that they need, and a lot of calls we're getting though, like with especially the Bird River and Gulf River flooding, is letting us know that they're flooding. It's outside of their jurisdiction, so realistically, it's the MNR that deal with those calls and have to go and actually do active on the ground work for them. But we appreciate their calls because it gives us the heads up what might be coming down our way.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering too, is if it fleshes out gaps for you, because I mean, let's face it, we went through the spring and the spring melt was going generally not too bad, but then we got this excessive rainfall that came and that just swelled everything. I was just more curious if, you know, we're strategically putting where we need to be, and, you know, and making sure that we're working together to manage some of those gaps.
Yeah, and Nathan's in communication with the emergency services at the city of Fort Lakes, especially on information. I know when, like last week, we did issue a patrol to go up to the northern portion of our watershed just to see how it's going, because I know also like, you know, we canvass the roads and up into the cottagers, and just to know, like, is our infrastructure being ruined or is it affecting infrastructure, but then relaying the message back to them. So we are in constant contact with them. Nathan's doing a good job with Parks Canada and getting the updates weekly from them. But we did receive a lot of rain in the last week. Trent Severn just reported, like, between April 1st and April 19th, they received over 110 millimeters of rain. Like it was a big load of rain that came in a short amount of time.
Thank you.
Jerry?
Through the chair, just so my curiosity, the closest I ever got to sandbagging filling was watching that idiot Justin Trudeau get a photo op doing it. These are reusable, are they not? Like, does the people that are getting flooded get flooded every season? It's sometimes worse, sometimes less. But I'm just wondering, are they a reusable thing? Do people actually?
Some folks hang on, folks hang on to them for sure.
Yes,
but I mean,
I just wonder if there's any education on that level, because if you got flooded once and you live on a riverbank, the odds are it's going to happen again. I just, from a resource point of view, I just wonder what the options are there for these people.
well, we we invested in the machines, so they're not hand loading these back.
Good.
With them. So, which has really made a huge impact of getting sandbags to people quicker.
To be honest with you, Mr. Chair, I don't answer that question, but I
I
can
was-
relay back to,
I was curious.
I suspect they're a one-time use, like after a
But
flood.
there's some folks that are very diligent about storing things, let's be honest here. So you do see those folks that don't want to be caught off guard in the spring and they're doing their best to
Yeah.
reuse,
Just
right?
rather than landfill.
But not everybody.
Can I ask one more question? please?
Sure, sure.
Thank you, through you. Does Kawartha Lakes Conservation work with the Eastern Ontario Trails Alliance in any way? Okay, I'm just curious because I know that bridges on the Beaver River Wetlands Trail are owned by Infrastructure Ontario, and they have an agreement with Eastern Ontario Trails Alliance to manage those bridges. And some of those bridges have become completely clogged up with beaver dams and detritus from the wetlands and caused a massive amount of flooding. And it was just, I was working with people from the Eastern Ontario Trails Alliance who would like a better relationship with the municipalities. They say that they don't have the funding to do this work and everybody's pushing it off to someone else. So I was just curious if we had any relationship. Okay. Thanks.
Seeing no more questions. Resolve that the update to the watershed conditions and the flood forecasting activities be received. Jerry? Harold? Strategic actions update first quarter, Mark?
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is part of our operational reporting back on some of the details of actions in our first quarter of 2026. We have all of our directors available for any questions that you might have on any of the specific updates.
Any questions? Resolve that the staff report on the strategic actions update for the first quarter of 2026 be received. Jerry? Mark? All in favor? Mark again. Proposed legislation of the regional consultation of the Kawartha Conservation Authorities.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe what I will do is I'll work through this slowly in sections and see if there's any questions maybe that come about through those sections, and that way we can kind of roll through the report if that makes some sense for everyone. A bit of background, this is further to ERO posting 025-1257. That was the initial proposal for regional consolidation of conservation authorities. That was forwarded on through the process and resulted in the introduction of Schedule 3 and Bill 97, which is a Budget Measures Act. Plan to protect Ontario. This was introduced into legislature on March 26. At the time of writing this report, it was going through second reading with the Standing Committee on Finance and Economic Affairs. It was referred to them. They did not have an open session for public comment or engagement during this process. And following that, as of when we were arriving, actually, it did receive third reading and royal assent. So it is now law. The act itself identifies a number of the, I would say, high-level measures of how the regional consolidation would occur, with a lot of additional details to be outlined in regulations and directions from the minister or the Ontario Provincial Conservation Agency. This report is also a combination of some of the information that we've gleaned from a presentation that was held with chairs and CAOs on April 9th with the province, which provided a little bit of their thinking on how this would transpire, but it didn't provide a lot of additional detail. But this board report is a combination of both of those elements. In terms of transition details, there was a commitment that all agreements, assets, liabilities, staff complement, and permitting business be transferred to the Regional Conservation Authority, and that did happen in the legislation. So that was good to see. It involves a number of different aspects, including some translation for staffing in terms of some of the agreements. Some conditions are added on as well for transition considerations. But in general, the intent, I would say, would be to transfer business to the Regional Conservation Authority in full. And they've tried to capture all aspects of the business, which I think is good in terms of trying to make sure that nothing is left behind. The minister may issue directions as well during the transition process, which was outlined. This is in relation to some of the normal powers of conservation authorities and doing regular business. Could involve budget and apportionment as well. An example of this would be in setting agreements, for instance, that might be new throughout the year. There may be a requirement for conservation authorities to double check with the transition committee or the OPCA to make sure that they're satisfied with it. And if everything's okay, then the agreement could be signed or put into force. So that's one example. Budget was another example that was provided in that the province wants to ensure that budgets are established by some point in the year. December 31st was identified or floated as an option. And so that is something that I anticipate would occur from the province in terms of direction. That all CAs have their budget established before the end of the year. Any questions on that? Yeah.
Through the chair, Bob.
Yes.
For the little bit I understand, pretty near every law they bring into effect has a long period of amendments that keep flowing through this process. It's never really a done deal, what I understand. This transition thing, do you see it working?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms.
Experience I have, like it doesn't, from the little bit I can see, the little bit that I know.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like it's a doable thing even.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is a very forthright question. I think the devil will be in the details. I think that from an honest standpoint, I can say the timing is very tight. It really depends what we're trying to accomplish in a time frame compared to implementation. I think that's really the key part. One aspect that was identified for us in the chair and GM meeting was it appears they're making a clear distinction between planning for transition and then transition. And I think that's actually a really good thing. Because if we're trying to transition and have something ready for February 1st, I don't think that's doable. Developing a plan that says, here's what needs to be done, and then implement it over the next couple of years, I think that's more doable. I think it's still going to be a challenge to do it in the time frame, but that's certainly better. And then in terms of some of the specifics, I think it's the devil in details at that point, and it'll come down to workloads. It'll come down to because this is new. This was something that during that initial call, we realized that would happen this year. A lot of the work on planning. It's not something that necessarily has been worked into our schedules. So it was we were brought into the loop, I guess you can say, in March. In terms of the timing, and so we've already got like our work plans all set out. So I think that will be part of the challenge, and I think a lot of that will be on the leadership crews and will be on corporate services. teams. So, and of course, with a little bit later on, actually, the next time is transition committees. There will be work at the transition committees to make sure that the planning process can go forward. But what that means is unclear. So it'd be really nice to know the entire roadmap as opposed to bits and pieces. And I think that's going to be a challenge too, is we will have to respond to directions from the province, but the province has to let us know what their game plan is in order to be able to respond effectively as well. And everything relies on them being on their timeframes and then us being able to meet their timeframes at the same point. So I think there will be some logistical elements that'll have to be worked out through this process.
Any other questions or comments?
Okay, on to transition committees then. There will be transition committees that will work to develop a transition plan. The transition plan, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, was a plan for transition, not the transition itself. In the meeting that we had with the province, they indicated that it is the plan. It's not necessarily to make sure everything's in place, not even necessarily finances was identified at that meeting. So in terms of choosing a banker that for the regional collaborative, that probably will be a decision of the new RCA, the new Regional Conservation Authority, as one example. And so what the plan is my assumption, at least without the information, is that it would try and organize those pieces so that they are easier to implement if we go forward. So what is everyone using as a banker, for instance? The committee will be in place until the transition date, which is expected to be February 1st. One aspect that they did highlight a couple of different times was that date could be a date named later in regulation. So they're providing themselves a bit of wiggle room to say if we can't meet the February 1st, then we can change that date and make sure it's reasonable. So I think reasonableness in that process is also a good thing. There will be a project executive that will be assigned to each of the regions that have an amalgamation of conservation authorities. The project executive will serve as the chair of the transition committee as well. And ultimately, that project executive will become the first CAO as well of the Conservation Authority, the new Regional Conservation Authority. The first year is, I'll wait for that part a little bit. So the transition committee itself is the project executive as the chair, and then each conservation authority that pulls into a regional conservation authority gets 2 members. There is a member of the board, has to be municipally elected. We don't have a problem with that because everyone is municipally elected, but some boards have volunteer members. Community members that are appointed to boards. So that's one element. The other is the CAO or designate. But it doesn't look like you can mix and match. So whoever that person is, whether they can make it or not, they are the representative. So that looks to be the box that has been put around the membership on that committee. In our meeting with the province, it looks like they're maybe still trying to define what the transition committee, what their timing on scheduling is like. It was, I would call it floated, that maybe they meet monthly and then maybe more frequently towards the end of the transition period. But there were no roles identified for any of the members, and I think that was something that kind of stood out for me, is that there is no schedule that's really associated with this at the moment. So one of my thoughts is, I know that this is an outstanding piece that the board will have to look at addressing as we go forward. We have 90 days to identify who the member would be from the board and from staff. And so I think that puts us at July 22nd, because it would have received royal assent today, and 90 days is then. So we're already halfway through the year at that point in time as well. So I think there's it makes sense to appoint early, but maybe have some information, hopefully, so that you know what you're getting into. But anyways, I think a lot of that also is geared around the province doesn't have project executives hired yet. So they have to do their business. And I think ours is actually relatively straightforward. I know a number of CAs have already appointed their members. But I think hiring the project executive is probably, I think the 90 days probably gives them the time to be able to do that. What else there? So that is, I think, a lot of the details there. The committee itself would be dissolved as the OBCA directs through written notice. And that will be more at the transition date or maybe a bit later, but it's definitely would be not ending earlier than the transition date. The OPCA will also direct the work of the transition committee. So we would, they did mention that there might be non-disclosure agreements that may have to be signed as part of this process. And other than that, there wasn't really a lot of detail that was put forward, other than some of the process elements is that the province identified. The province has to be satisfied with the transition plan. And to do that, they will essentially approve it. So any questions on the transition committees plan? Nope. Administration and governance details is the next section. The main piece here is that the province recognized that the board size would be exceptionally large under the current framework. So they have put into place now that the county level would be where members would be selected from, in addition to single tier and regional municipalities. So that does have an impact for Cavan Monaghan and also Trent Lakes as part of our membership, in that appointments would come through Peterborough County now, as opposed to from the lower tiers. The details of how that would sort itself out would be defined later in regulation, or would have to be worked out by municipalities. That process is not clearly defined at the moment. But I would expect there would be some resolution or some additional detail that come through the regulations, since additional regulations dealing with size of board and maximum number of appointees from municipality would also be included in that. The method for selecting members would be similar to what we have right now, which is population based. And apportionment wasn't necessarily identified, but I would assume that the apportionment would follow in a similar manner. And the minister still reserves the ability to appoint an additional member from the agricultural community on that bigger board. There were some changes as well to appointments. So one of the key ones is that chairs and vice chairs may serve for a term of 2 years and not more than 8 years, whether served consecutively or otherwise. So we have some longstanding members I know here on the board. One thing that we put forward as a question was not answered at the time, but at least it's fodder for a future conversation. At least is that does that include the current tenure, or does that start as soon as the Regional Conservation Authority gets established? The other point in that is a question about whether or not once you exceed that 8 years, which is going to come up like relatively quick, is there still an exemption request in play for members? So those are not really clear at the moment until we see what how the Conservation Authorities Act looks as a whole. And so that's the admin and governance section. Any questions on that front? So moving forward then, first CAO, as I mentioned, is project executive. They would serve up to the transition date and then 2 years from that transition date forward. So theoretically, their last day would be February 1st, 2028. Is that right? 29? I can't do math today. 2029. So they would be on for that time period. The province did recognize that if they have other opportunities, then there's an opportunity to reappoint a project executive, or if it's close to the term, maybe the new Regional Conservation Authority wants to hire their own CAO at that point in time. So the terminology and the legislation is meant to provide flexibility in those scenarios. An interesting part around the project executive is that the province will negotiate their compensation for the transition date, and then they indicated that there may be a requirement for municipalities to pick up the CAO cost moving forward through the transition implementation period. So that would be from February 1st onward. Whether or not that's included in the budget guidelines and direction that the province provides is unknown. But that would certainly be an additional cost, or a cost that the municipalities would certainly want to be aware of moving into 2027. Like I say, given that our budget would have to be approved early, it'd be nice to have some guidance from the province on that. And yeah.
Do you think that that detail is something that the province is doing to try to get municipalities more invested in the Conservation Authority? Or is it just a downloading of a cost, or is it going to put make it just generally harder for the conservation authorities to act? I mean, why are they choosing that? I mean, we knew that some of these costs may be downloaded, but why are they already giving the heads up on that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think if I was to hazard a guess, which I almost think it is a hazard to guess, sure, is I think maybe a couple of things. I think part of it is, yeah, maybe it's transferring the ownership as soon as they can, just so that there's a clear line in the sand, so to speak, on where they're using when they're able to use their funds for what for the project executive and what they consider to be the lead up to transition, versus like when the Regional Conservation Authority is now an entity and should be paying for their CAO. So that I think is what they're kind of doing, but I also think it's a bit unreasonable at the same time to establish a budget in 2027 amongst 7 conservation authorities, lump them all together and hope it works, right? I think there should be an ability for the province to continue funding those individuals, especially since they set the compensation amount. And given that in this framework, I'm going into maybe what I think about implementation as opposed to what the province thinks. But I think the Regional Conservation Authority will probably not have even established their pay grid at that point in time. So I think it's hard for the Regional Conservation Authority to pay for that, not knowing all the pieces. So, but it was something that they put forward, and I think that's they've been known to float ideas in order to see what the response is sometimes, and maybe that's also part of this, to see whether or not there's whether or not that comment provides a concern amongst any of the municipalities.
Presumably feedback will be directed on that issue. Directed that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's my best guess on that front. Next point is watershed municipalities. There will be, in addition to, so one of the transition elements is that all existing advisory groups would transfer to the Regional Conservation Authority. In addition to that, or perhaps in substitution of that as time goes on, there would be a watershed council that would have to be developed as well by the Regional Conservation Authority that would match the watershed boundaries. So that's the intent of that at the moment. And more details will be set out in regulation on that front. There really wasn't a lot of focus on the watershed councils, other than that was the province's interpretation of loss of knowledge, and wanting to compensate for that. In terms of risk reduction, the minister has identified that there be a number of things that would be issued, and that would include things like can't amalgamate, can't dissolve, and can't enlarge your area. So those are key ones that are considered a risk because they would change the transition framework. So they just want to deal with what is. I mentioned the budgetary and apportionment matters for 2027, and I also mentioned in the transition about prohibiting us from making decisions as a conservation authority unless there be specific approval from the province or the transition committee as it may be, and that depends on some big things that might affect risk, like organizational structure, as an example. So the two big summaries, I think, in this is that, well, one is that there's going to be a lot more detail as things get rolled out. We'll see new regulations come forward. The regulations will follow the legislative process. However, that's determined by the province, but a lot of this will be done through directions, which don't go through the same rigor. So a lot of those will be meant to streamline the process and make things happen quicker. So that's going to be the province's main means of doing that, whether through the Ontario Provincial Conservation Agency or whether it be through the minister. And the budget will move up as well. And I'd certainly appreciate feedback from yourselves on timing, because I know there's municipal elections happening as well this year. So how does our budget get approved with our complement of our board if the end date is December and potentially might not be representing municipalities at that point, or there might be some things that have to get worked out on that end, or you might have to seek some municipal sanctioning, I guess, to act on behalf of the municipality post-election if anyone was not running or might not be successful in the political arena, or it might be a reappointment of the municipality for that short time frame. That's the other option that might come forward. So,
if you don't mind,
Yeah.
a comment on that, I could just tell you what the LSRCA is doing, and that's they're starting the whole process right away,
Yeah.
keeping it exactly the same, hoping to have it done by before the election is concluded.
Yeah.
Through you, Chair, the new council gets sworn in November 15th. So for us, for a budget process, it won't come till January in election year.
Yeah.
So it's.
Yeah, and there will be a mismatch for sure.
For sure there will be.
Yeah, because the province was pretty clear that they were going to make sure that the Conservation Authority budgets were struck by the end of the year. So there will definitely be a mismatch, and so the levies would be set at that point. And so for me, the question is, September, October, or December, kind of being a couple of benchmarks. But if it's earlier, we have to get started, like say, right away. Yeah.
I don't know, I guess it's complicated for you guys, I mean, because it wouldn't make sense to go through all the steps of approving the preliminary parts of the budget only to have the final one determined by the new board in December to go to municipalities in January. What have you done historically this year?
In an election year, what we usually do is have the budget developed by the existing board, and then we wait until the new board's in place and let the new board approve it. And we found that works the best.
Right. Yeah. Sure, I get it.
Yeah, but yeah, this year will be a little bit different. Any preferences on that front?
I think that's the way to go.
Yeah.
Is to have it designed and ready to go for January. So work through process with the existing board, come the new board, then at least you're ready to go.
Yeah. So the only wrinkle with January is that we'll actually have to have the budget done in December, voted on and approved by the board.
We
So,
have a new council in for 6
Yeah.
weeks, so.
Yeah.
And they'll have a better idea too, and you probably know more by then, right?
yeah, hopefully, yes.
Yeah.
That'd be great. Yeah, so I think what we'll do is, as staff, is accelerate the process. And then have a little bit of wiggle room at the end, hopefully, to see how things develop, but get started on it right away. The other item, which we'll bring forward at the next meeting is the appointments to the transition committee. And ideally, we'll have a little bit more information from the province in terms of what the roles are for that transition committee, and maybe a better idea on frequency of meetings.
So is that committee made up of staff?
The transition committee is the project executive and the chair, so they're the chair, sorry. And then it's a member of the board and the CAO or designate. So I would put my name forward as being one of the members, and then a member from the board.
And would it be the chair?
Could be chair, it could be vice chair, it could be anyone. It could be a member. So it's open.
We can let you know if we're interested, or Pat would deal with all that.
I know that Pat has indicated some interest. I know Peter, you mentioned that you would have some interest as well, and I think it's ultimately a board decision on. There might be interest as well from yourself or maybe other members as well. Ultimately, it'll be a board decision. Probably the best thing would be to let people know if you are interested, just to kind of help prepare a bit. So.
Thank you.
And the last thing I'll mention is I did attach their presentation from the chair CAO meeting with us. So.
Yes.
I'd just like to make one comment. This was supposed to be about efficiency and saving money. I don't see any efficiencies or saving money in this entire plan. I'll read the prepared resolution. Resolved that the staff report highlighting Bill 97, Schedule 3 amendments to the Conservation Authority Act to facilitate the amalgamation of conservation authorities into a regional conservation authority be received. Jerry? Mark? All in favor? CAO report, Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Things have been busy, as you can imagine, over last month. We've completed our business development plans and performance plans as well. And we're also looking at a number of policies that we're reviewing just to make sure that things are up to date. One of the key ones is actually our human resource, our personnel policy. There's a number of items that are out of date on that, and even though we know that transition is going to happen soon, we still think it's important to make sure there's some updates on that front. We are also responding to the auditor's note on developing a risk register for the organization. So that is underway, and that's something that you'll see come to board meetings on a frequent basis. And then the province's plan to amalgamate conservation authorities into the entities has taken a little bit of work to this point, just trying to work with our neighboring conservation authorities as a collective of CAs as well as regionally, in order to see what trail of breadcrumbs we can follow to try and understand what we're trying to plan for. There's been a lot of work from John on communications across all of the different program areas, supporting those areas. A lot of work on the flood forecasting side as well. So my thanks to John on that front, and he has also been representing us on the climate change front as well, which is tremendous. In terms of human resources, we have 2 staff that are moving on. They've done some really great work for us, but they have moved on. Our accountant and business analyst has moved on to a neighboring municipality. So we wish him good luck. And then our agriculture stewardship technician and Alice coordinator is moving on to a new opportunity as well. And I'm also happy to announce, although it's not in the staff report, more breaking news than anything else, is that we have rehired for those 2 positions. So that's great news. And we also have our seasonal that are coming on in May. Planning and development, Christy already delivered the great news on that, in that we have 9 months running at 100%. And not only that, but our time to deliver permits is exceptionally short. So we're doing a great job on making sure that not only are the commitments met in terms of the benchmarks, we're bettering those by far, making sure that we have effective service delivery for everyone that comes to our door. Conservation lands, we have our road study is underway. You might have noticed the condition of the road on the way in. It's been fixed. Actually, this is just a result of a fair bit of rain that we had over the last little bit, which really carved a few channels into our road. So we are looking forward to having that road study completed. So we have a good plan of a path forward for a concern for the Regional Conservation Authority at that point for what is an effective measure to actually make sure we have a sustainable road system that we don't have to maintain so much. We also had the deputy mayor of Havelock Belmont Methuen come out for site check. I don't know exact particulars on how that came about, but he heard about our talking forest and our disc golf, and they want to do something similar. So he came out on the rainiest day possible. And with Melissa, Melissa was very happy to show him about in the rain because she loves the rain. And so they went out, looked at a couple of things. We were able to get the talking forest going on the cell phones, and also saw the disc golf. So they will, I understand, maybe come back when it's a little bit drier, and kind of take a look at things. And so it was great to have them over, and it's great to also be recognized by another municipality in terms of some of the great work that we're doing here in our CAs. We've also been awarded a substantial amount of money from FCM, the Green Municipal Fund, for riparian plantings around 6 stormwater management ponds in the city of Kawartha Lakes, which is tremendous. And I didn't mention the number, but that's 73,000 and change, almost 73,820. And all the stewardship programs are aligning really nicely for 2026. And with that, I'll just, there's a lot of additional information in the CAO report, but I'll just cut it off there and welcome any questions that you might have.
Thank you.
Where was that resolution for your report? There you go. Resolved that the CAO's monthly report for the meeting 3rd, 26th be received. Harold? Tracy? All in favor?
Now you're on that sheet.
Yeah. Now our correspondence, Mark, you highlight what our correspondence is?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This was something that our Chair Pat Warren, Acting Chair Pat Warren, wanted to have on the agenda. It was a correspondence. I just want to double check and make sure everyone has received it. If not, there's a copy on your table there. This was a correspondence that was received after the agenda came out by the Watershed Conservation Coalition, and this is a group of 75 retired conservation professionals that have really been highlighting the importance of CAs to the province and wanting to make sure that conservation authorities have a voice and they have a tremendous wealth of experience amongst their collective. This correspondence was forwarded by Rob Maservi, who's the president of the Lake Stewards Association and was a former CAO for Sauls and Lower Trent Conservation. And really, as was described to me from Rob Maservi, from a conversation that I had with him, was he kind of called it a terse communication. And they did have concerns about not having a public session to the standing committee, which is usually what would happen when legislation comes in, is an ability for affected parties to express their concerns to the provincial government and for that government then to consider those requests. That did not happen with Bill 97, and this was the correspondence that came out from the Watershed Coalition that was forwarded on to Premier Ford and their cabinet and MDPs. So at her request, that's on the agenda here.
Any comment on how we should proceed?
Guy, can we
Yep.
endorse this? Or,
Through you, Mr. Chair, there is some very forthright language, I would call it, in the letter, which I think is appropriate for Watershed Conservation Coalition. I'm not sure that we would want to support it.
so we can just receive it.
I think we have a couple of options, which is receive, and maybe if the board really wanted to, we could send a letter of acknowledging the efforts of the coalition. If you felt that was appropriate. I know that our acting chair did, she must have reception
Yeah,
issues.
right. There's some very strong, I hadn't noticed it strongly.
It's very forthright.
I wouldn't.
So a couple options there in terms of I think receiving the correspondence is totally appropriate for sure. And following up from that, I know that our chair Warren was looking at a motion that could go forward to the province. And so that I supplied to everyone last night by email. That's also part of the agenda package there. If you felt that was appropriate to move forward, it's the resolution that was crafted recognizes the province's desire to regionally consolidate conservation authorities. It also identifies the watershed responsibilities that conservation authorities have and highlights a couple of things that we believe are important, like phasing of transition and making sure that the province is also aware that full funding should be provided through the transition, which I think is a key element. And in addition to that is that really the province should be involving affected parties in the framework. So that includes whether it be the legislative process, regulatory process, implementation frameworks. We should be involved in that, as well as like conservation authorities and municipalities. It shouldn't just be the province determining this. That good outcomes are usually the result of multiple faces, providing different perceptions and different ideas to the table, which creates a stronger system. And this is not what has been occurring to date on this, but would be really beneficial, I think, in terms of making sure that things go forward in a productive way, and not just the transition committee, but how things are actually framed. So those were identified, and that would it's suggested to go forward to the province, to Hassan as the Chief Conservation Executive in watershed municipalities.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yep, true.
let's talk about stronger language. If you're up to a friendly, there's the one that I think we can be a little stronger on.
So the motion still has to be made anyway, so it's not mine because I have no ability to do that, but I know Pat is not able to join us at the moment, so it's a possibility that can be explored, so yeah.
Looking for that possibility.
Are you making that motion? Can you read back the motion for the board? Tracy's motion.
Okay, all right, so sorry, can I just double check? Did you want to receive the correspondence first?
A motion to receive, Tracy. I think, Mark, all in favor to receive?
And then the motion to move forward under this next piece is open, I guess, at the moment for any sort of
Friendly.
anything that you want right now, because it's not even on the floor. It's just words on a paper at the moment.
Okay. Well, thanks for letting me just add into something. Just when I read through, I felt that the second that it had some stronger language. So I'll just put it in there what I was thinking. You can go through the chair, like for the friendly ask. That the board reaffirms its commitment to preserving local watershed expertise, ensuring municipal representation in governance, and to maintain or enhance programs and service levels that protect property and natural resources.
Mel, do you have that?
All over the place, because I'm quickly out loud.
Yeah.
I do not. Want me to start again?
I got the first part. Commitment to local watershed expertise.
Preserving local watershed expertise instead of just being science-based, because I think if they're setting strong language, why don't we set some stronger language, right? And strong municipal partners, changing to ensuring municipal representation in governance.
In governance or and governance? In governance.
Because it's just saying strong municipal partnerships. Well, let's be stronger. And then the last is in the and to maintain or enhance programs or service levels that protect people, property, and natural resources. Instead of the continued delivery, I just feel like we can use stronger language.
And since this is so you've identified a number of great wording around that. Do you just want to make the motion for this to move forward?
I would, but I mean, if I'm trying to, I know it's passed.
Yeah, I know.
If I should pass it through as a friendly.
Well,
Sure.
All we're doing is strengthening the
Yeah.
resolution. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
This is a suggested motion anyway, so I think Tracy it should be free to make the entire motion.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
thinking
Okay,
that.
good.
Yep.
Do you have that, Mel? You have it? Okay. Do you want to read it out?
Tracy, do you have it?
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
I can go for it. So this is a resolve that the board recognizes province's objectives under Bill 6897 to strengthen oversight, consistency, and modernization across conservation authorities through I'm going to shorten it, OPCA, and the proposed transition to a regional watershed-based framework, and that the board reaffirms its commitment to preserving local watershed expertise.
Yeah.
Ensuring municipal representation and governance,
Yes.
and to maintain or enhance
Grant level.
program. I missed line that goes down on the G. Program and service levels that protect people, property, and natural resources.
Yes.
And then the rest follows as it goes.
Yeah.
Seconder for that motion? I take my, Gary. All in favor?
So,
We're down to regulation mapping update. Chris McNabb, Cap.
Through you, Mr. Chair. You may recall a couple of months ago, Corey came to the board and made a presentation with regards to some of the updates on our regulation mapping. So every year we go through a process where we take a look at all of the site visits that staff have conducted to make any adjustments to our regulated features on our mapping. So oftentimes the M&R will provide us with a layer that says there's a wetland here. And after going out to the site, we are able to determine maybe the wetland is smaller or larger or isn't there at all. And we provide updates to our regulation mapping as a result of that. So we do that on an annual basis rather than sort of one-off every time it happens, because otherwise it can get pretty overwhelming for staff. In addition to that, we also did some adjustments to our lake levels to sort of clean up some of the overlap where we had some properties that were being sort of not misrepresented, but the buffer layer was sort of overlapping that made it look like the properties were maybe more regulated than they were. So we've done a bunch of those adjustments. Corey brought them to you, I think back in January or February. We did a public consultation because there was quite a few properties that were impacted. We felt like it was probably appropriate for us to go out to public consultation, let people know that this change was happening, and to give them the opportunity to ask any questions, provide any comments, concerns, anything that might be a burning topic for them. We posted that for just over 30 days. We have received none to date, no comments, no concerns, no questions from the public or our partners. So we're looking now to move forward with the implementation of those mapping changes. And once approved by the board, we can provide that updated mapping to our municipal partners so that when they are reviewing planning and building applications, they can determine whether or not they need to circulate us to ensure that the natural hazards are also considered.
Yeah, Jared?
Through the chair, I'm just curious, when you try to notify the individual property owners, I know past experiences, some areas are very weak on that. Can you get actual information from the municipality and get like a mailing address so that you know you got a hold of the last owner of the property type of thing?
So we do have the ability to determine, property ownership. It costs us $8 per hit every time we want to look for that. So we don't, in this circumstance, we had, I think one of the regulation mapping was to impact about 9,000 properties. We did not do that. What we did was we posted it up on our website. We did some social media posts to sort of let the public know in general that this was happening and to solicit input from that perspective.
So would they generally be in specific areas, like a cluster of homeowners or whatever property owners that would fall under that?
It's all across the watershed. Okay.
Seeing no other questions or comments, resolved that the updated regulation mapping and meeting the legislative requirements and incorporating an update in technical data be adopted for immediate use.
I'll wait button.
And that the corresponding. Yep.
carry on.
And that the correspondence being sent to particular municipalities identify the regulation mapping update with inclusion of the geospatial layers of the regulation area mapping specific to their municipality.
I'll make that motion.
Okay,
Thank you.
Priya? Tracy? All in favor? Louisa Breda, Director of Corporate Services, Capital Expenditure Approval, the server room upgrade.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. We have our server room is an enclosed room. However, the ventilation was not upgraded to maintain better flow of air in that server room. We have had a few failures on the MDR system. And we looked at some options that were very price prohibitive at the time we were building the budgets. But we addressed it with the fire extinguisher specific for the server room and electronics. As we looked further into solutions, we actually were offered something that is reasonable, under $10,000, that would improve the ventilation and the air quality and the dust, because that's a very high risk of fire in that room. We are coming to you to ask for an approval to use a capital reserve to incur the cost that would be about 8,100 plus a contingency 10% to improve the ventilation.
Any comments or questions?
Well, it sounds important.
With that,
It sounds very important. to
it
us.
sounds very important. Sounds practical. Resolved that the Board of Directors approve additional capital expenditure in an amount of $8,100, inclusive of applicable taxes, and an amount of 10% contingency should be required for the improvement of the server, the room ventilation system, to reduce the risk of overheating and fire, and that the upgrade be funded by the Capital Asset Acquisition Reserve. Harold? Priya? All in favor? Any new business? Reports and updates from board members?
Happy Earth.
Yes.
No closed session. And adjournment. Resolved that the Board of Directors meeting the 3rd of 26th be adjourned. Motion. Jerry? Mark? All in favor? Thank you very much, Board. You've been very patient.
Yep, thanks, very great.